well has had a huge impact. They frequent on issues of domestic violence. They frequently talk about the power of the pulpit, where certain ideologies and certain sort of discussions around justifying men in their roles within the homes as them being the head of the house and so forth. And again, we'll talk about the impact of religion. So the application of this theory. The reason why that I chose Galton's theory of violence was that it expanded my understanding of what violence is, that it's not just the behavior, it's not just the hitting, it's not just the rape, the murder, and all those things that we see frequently on the news, but it also includes structural and institutional violence and cultural violence. So, for example, direct violence is, for example, domestic violence. We have structural violence. So what institutions within the Samoan society, what aspects of Samoan society contributes to structural violence? And one of the things that I looked at in the research was the family as in itself as an institution, the village and the church. Some of the cultural violence or the ideologies that are sort of manifest and reaffirms this kind of violence is looking at the social divisions within the Samoan society, attitudes towards women, the actual chief system, the whānau matai, and again this area around the power of the pulpit. There were three aspects of whāsāmoa that I looked at. And one of the things I really wanted to kind of hone in is that whāsāmoa is very complex. It warrants a thesis in itself. And so what I decided was to kind of reframe and refocus it to these three overarching institutions within the Samoan culture, which is family, village, and church. In the Samoan culture, there's the immediate family, there is the extended family, and then there's the broader family. So even the whole concept of family is very complex. It's not just mum, dad, and the siblings. And so it can complicate things, especially when I'm trying to understand the issues of domestic violence in Samoa. So the application of Galton's typology of violence, there was an issue of male impunity, where many of the men's attitudes feel that they can get away with a lot of things because our culture says it, because religion says it, and so forth. And this kind of informed the way that they treated their wives. Many of them fall under this mofotani status, or those who are women who are married into the husband's family. And the literal translation of nofotani, nofo means to sit, and tani is male. So literally even the word itself carries stigmas to their roles and responsibilities. The other issue was looking at the social structure within Samoan society. So the roles of women and children. And in the Samoan culture, it's divided into four. We have the tamaitai, or those who are not married, women who are not married. We have the aumanga, and basically these are the men who do not hold chief titles. The wharitua and tosi, these are the women who are married to the chiefs and orators. And then we have the children. So with some of those divisions, it creates a lot of issues as well. And again, I'll cover that in the next few slides. So when applying Galton's typology of violence to the village, there are 275 areas of which villages, of which 240 are traditional villages. Women can hold titles, but even when, again, as we kind of spoke a few slides previously, even though that women have recognized chief titles, they may choose not to attend meetings, as their attendance will go against sort of accepted local norms. Even though Article 15 of the Constitution forbids discriminations of grounds of sex, however, in Article 100 of the Constitution, it vetoes Article 15, which says that the matai title shall be held in accordance with Samoan customs and usage. So if the village that I belong to says women cannot hold titles, then women cannot hold titles as part of the Article 100. And then this provision is not defined further in the Constitution or any legal act, yet Samoan custom may include the exclusion of female matais from governance roles. So even there in the Constitution of Samoa, it kind of contradicts the roles of women in Samoan society. So this is just, again, just reinforcing some of the statistics. There are still some villages in Samoa who do not allow women to be chief title holders. There's this stigma around the rural and urban, where in the rural settings in the village, women struggle to succeed because they don't have a lot of advancements when it comes to in relationship to men. So for example, if men are matais and so forth, women hold certain roles and responsibilities. If you were to look at the role of women in urban society, so I'm looking at sort of, corporate Samoa, many of them who hold the CEO and ACO high positions in government are women. And so while they struggle to succeed in the rural area, in the urban area, women have a lot of success. It's because in the rural and the urban areas, they have individual rights, versus in the rural area or in the village area, under the communal law, women do not necessarily have full rights. And that's where a lot of the clashes happen. The other thing that's really causing a lot of problems in Samoa is this concept of whalaulawe, so funerals, weddings, the bestowal of titles. Many of these ceremonies or these responsibilities cost a lot of money. And a lot of the times, the men are not really, they're frustrated because they cannot provide for these whalaulawe's, and then in turn, it's information that's been gathered out of frustration. This is what causes some other, this is what causes domestic violence or family violence in general. And so in Samoa, there's funerals, the bestowal of titles, you have court cases, donations to the church ministers, buildings of churches, village donations, and other ceremonies like the Ifoma. And these are very expensive, very, very expensive. And so a lot of them rely on their families from overseas to send money over to ensure that these ceremonial responsibilities are taken care of. The church, so in Samoa, as an institution, the church, 99.7% of Samoan population belongs to a church, and the church itself, it is tightly woven into Samoan society, in the village, in politics, and so forth. In 2017, Samoa was one of the first country in the world to amend its constitution and declare to the world that they are a Christian nation. And so that in itself kind of highlights the importance and the stronghold that religion has in the islands of Samoa. And so one of the things that is frequently talked about in the research that I've done is this prophecy of Nawhanua. And she was a goddess who held the 4 paramount titles in Samoa. And this is what she said. So this is Malietoa. You have just now arrived, but the head of the kingdom has already been delivered away, except only the tail of the government is left in there for you. So take it with you while you await from the heavens the head which are with the government, so you can serve in it. And so fast forward a few years later, John William arrives, an LMS missionary arrives onto the shores of Sapai, and this is a picture of Malietoa Moli, who is the son of Malietoa Vainupo, who was the grandson of Malietoa Fitemanu, who had this prophecy, this dream. And basically what had happened was when John Williams arrived on the shores of Samoa, Malietoa Vainupo saw it as a fulfillment of this prophecy, and in doing so bestowed upon John Williams the highest title at the time, which is the title of Whenua. And I'll talk a little bit about that. Now, many church ministers in Samoa are referred to as Whenua. Now, this caused a lot of issues in Samoa because from the people that I spoke with from the research, and consistent research right now, all of a sudden now the status of women who were the whenua in Samoan culture, the highest status in Samoan culture, through this really sort of, benign exchange, all of a sudden they were demoted down, and then John Williams was promoted up. And because of that, status was taken away from women, and because men were predominantly the religious drivers in Samoa, setting up church schools and so forth, now all of a sudden we have the males here and the females here. Okay? And so because of this bestowal of this title of whenua, now all of a sudden we have the demotion of women. With the introduction of Christianity, it also domesticated the roles of women, and it changed the whole function of women in Samoan society. And so I just wanted to quickly read this from Davidson, 1967. And he said, This event, so the demotion of the Sphengena status, this event marked the end of a new age. No longer would relationships between Samoans be judged solely in terms of indigenous traditions, or the issue of Samoan politics be resolved completely within the framework of an ancient political structure. From this time, in the beliefs, the knowledge and industrial achievements of the Western world increasingly influenced Samoan through action, and the men who were the principal agents of their introductions, missionaries, settlers, and so forth, became increasingly important participants in Samoan life.